Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources. Hi, I'm Kerry Fink with Helping Seniors of Brevard. Welcome to today's episode of Helping Seniors TV. I have the privilege of sitting in for our president and founder, Joe Steckler, and you're going to want to keep a notepad handy as we go through today's program because this is important, and I would almost call it kind of like breaking news. We were talking about this event called the Secure Act, and it really has the capacity to shift how people think about their retirement and making the smart strategic moves to be able to do that. I talk a lot about Joe Steckler having this focus on creating an aging plan, and that is so that you can age very successfully and correctly with all the tools and resources you need by just thinking ahead a few steps down the road. And that's what I love about our next guest, August Velten of August Velten Associates. He's an expert on Social Security. He's an expert in retirement planning, which we've talked about before is slightly different than financial planning, because financial planning is when you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s and maybe trying to figure out how you're going to set up for retirement. But retirement planning is making sure that you maximize what you have available to you as you do transition from the working world to the retirement world. And that's why this conversation today about the Secure Act is so important. So maybe just in a nutshell, let me start by asking you to explain what the Secure Act is and why it's appropriate that that we need to pay attention to it.
Sure. It was legislation that was signed in late December and went into force January 1st. And it changed a lot of rules that have to do with 401ks, 403bs, and specifically for IRAs and what we call RMDs, which I'll explain in a minute, and what age you must start your RMDs out, and how inherited IRAs work as compared to spousal IRAs, and things like that. How the rule will change, let's say somebody who has named a trust on their beneficiary designation, so the trust receives the proceeds from the IRA, or in fact they have an IRA inside of a trust. All those things have changed. What I'd like to talk about today is mostly what will be important to the average American with their income stream as we go along, and maybe their children in regards to the new rules.
Yeah, I think I had, as a layperson, I think I remember hearing somebody come up to me and say, listen, this changes everything, because if I had planned to do this for my kids and they could just hold on to this IRA down the road and deal with it at some point. But now, as I understand, there's these rules that say you're required to distribute this funds within a certain amount of time anyway.
Depending on the individual who inherits it. Again, there's a difference between an inherited IRA and a spousal IRA. So let's just go over a few things.
Sure.
When you're in retirement, again, what you're trying to do is be as tax efficient as you can. And what they've done now is they've said, okay, your required minimum distribution, that's the age when you must take money out of your IRA. It's changed from 70.5 to 72. Now, do I think that's a great deal? Not necessarily, because it allows you more time to build up even a larger tax bill with the IRS. If you're successful and you don't have to take that distribution, let's say you're going to turn 70.5 this year, you would not have to take it now. You'd be able to wait till 72. But if your assets have grown, it just simply means you created a larger tax bill at that point. The other piece is that a lot of planning is done around spousal. So let's just talk about spousal first. The Secure Act did not change spousal R&D requirements. Well, what does that mean? If a spouse inherits an IRA from the other spouse, it's called a spousal IRA. Spousal IRA basically says that new spousal situation, you have a single individual, can wait to take their required minimum distribution until they turn 72. Again, good idea, bad idea, it depends on everybody's individual situation. But more importantly is something called an inherited IRA, which is almost everybody out there that's not spousal may very well be, or the large majority will be, inherited IRAs. Now, in the past, there was something called a stretch IRA. And a stretch IRA would allow, let's say I had an IRA and I was going to leave it to my grandchildren, all right, bypass my children, leave it to my grandchildren. Because back then, and under the old rules, you could leave that money. Now, the grandchild, regardless of age, has to take an RMD starting by the end of the year following death. So somebody dies in 2020, by the end of 2021, that child would have to take an RMD, but it would be based on their age, and there's a table for it. It's a mortality table, and there's something called a divisor. The larger the divisor, the less money has to come out. So the point would be that if the divisor for an age 5-year-old, let's say, was fairly large, in general, that allowed that child, with guidance, hopefully, to let that money grow and only have to take out a small amount per year, whereas the earnings would be a lot more. So over their lifetime, as long as they didn't get involved with Harley-Davidson University, then they'd have a lot of money later on in life. Now, that has changed. If a child or anybody else inherits an IRA, they must take out the distribution, the RMD, over a 10-year period. Doesn't mean they have to start taking it out next year or the year after. They simply have to take it out within 10 years. So they could wait and take it out in the 10th year, but then they're going to create a very large tax bill in 1 year and could lose a lot of value. So strategies need to be changed. And one of the things that's important to understand about this is that let's assume for a second that you're planning on leaving your IRA to your child. And let's say when your child inherits that IRA, you pass away and your child inherits the IRA, that child is maybe 35, 40 years old and in a fairly high tax bracket. Okay, now they inherit this IRA and they have to take out this money. Even if they wait 10 years, more than likely they're going to be in an even higher tax bracket because their earnings potential goes up as we get older, up to a certain point. So what happens is that there's a tremendous amount of value that can be lost if we leave that the way it is, because when they take that money, they're going to lose a lot of it back to the IRS. So they've tweaked these things and they've changed some rules, but it's very important to understand that that person is going to have to take that money out and pay whatever tax bracket they're in. Now, granted, if you're a child and you leave that IRA to a child and they're in a very low income situation, probably going to take the money and spend it, and that's fine. But in general, if the child is doing well, which we all hope for, we're just really hurting the situation because we're going to give way too much value away and back to the IRS. So, is there a fix? Well, yeah. For many years, I've been touting Roth IRA. I don't know if, and this goes back a lot of years, but now all of a sudden it's become much more important because if in fact you leave a Roth to that child, and let's assume that child does have to take the distribution just the way they would with a regular IRA. Well, they take it, but it's non-taxable, so they're not adding any tax consequence to their situation, and they can take that money and do whatever it is because what I always say is that an IRA, traditional IRA, is forever taxed. A Roth IRA is never taxed. So what we want to do is proper planning is maybe we should start changing our IRA, which you can do, it's called recategorization, changing our IRA from IRA to Roth. So again, I use an example here saying if you were going to plant several acres of corn, would you rather pay tax on the kernel of corn that you'd plant in that ground to create that stalk with 3 or 4 ears of corn on it with a lot of kernels on it, all right? Or would you rather pay the tax on the stalk with the kernels on those ears of corn? Well, of course, you'd rather pay tax on the kernel of the corn, that thing you put in the ground to grow that. It's the same thing with an IRA. You want to put money in there, but you want to pay the tax on what you put in, not on the crop at the other end, which is going to hopefully be substantial amounts of dollars. It just makes common sense to pay the tax now. We know what the tax brackets are now. As of 2025, that is going to change. That's when the current tax legislation ends. Regardless of politics or anything else, taxes are going to be higher in the future. And again, something that I always bring up in these conversations is this. If it turns out to be a single person in the future, then their tax bracket in general is going to be higher, simply because a married couple right now, as an example, they have a $24,400 standard deduction. But a single person is $12,200. But that single person could have as much income as the married couple. So they really get hit. So down the road, it's very possible that you'd have a situation where you have a survivor out of a husband and wife situation winds up in a single tax bracket pay situation and are paying undue taxes and therefore cannot live at the standard of living that they would like to, but they would be able to if they weren't paying that money back to the IRS. And again, how do you do that? You do it with proper Roth planning associated with Social Security planning, because your Social Security is tax advantage. Very, very important concept. What am I going to pay on my Social Security? How much do I have to include in my Social Security benefit in my taxable income? Can be controlled by using Roth planning. So that's kind of where I go in this direction. But so you can have a spousal IRA, hasn't changed. If somebody inherited IRA for somebody who died before December 31st of 2019, old rules. Somebody died January 1st, January 2nd,
Wow.
new rules.
Wow.
Okay, so we have to be aware of a situation. Let me give you an example real quick. We have a case that we're working on. It's up in Maine. We have an office in Maine. And it's my daughter that's up there. And she has a client coming to see her. And this client is divorced. And her ex-husband died in December.
Okay.
And she was still a beneficiary on his IRA. So she's inheriting that IRA. So when I looked at the rules, I said, here's a situation where he died in 2019, the old rules apply. If he had died early January, let's say, new rules apply. And the reason that this is important and how it works is because she wants to take that money with as least tax consequences possible, spread it out, and help her daughter through school, through college. If you lost a lot of that value to taxes, that's a problem.
Right.
And guess what? She's divorced. She's a single taxpayer.
Right.
Right? So these are the types of things. So Secure Act, a lot of important stuff. Most of the stuff that was in there is not relatable to the general public per se. It's relatable to 401ks and 403bs. But one of the things that I want to bring up here, and the reason I do, because we're going to be teaching a course that's called TAA, the Truth About Annuities. Okay? An annuity is basically guaranteed to pay a lifetime income. And guess what? In the Secure Act, there is legislation almost forcing the issue that within 401ks and 403bs, which has not been the case, they can make available guaranteed income products.
Okay.
And I call them products. Most of your investments in a 401k are controlled by SEC or FINRA, they're investments, whereas annuity products are under legal reserve companies, which are life insurance companies, protection, right? What do they protect? Life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, medical insurance, and guess what? Annuities fit in there because when you put money into an annuity, it's principal protected, right? Well, if we could put money in that column, I call it a column, in that category, as an IRA, let's say, and then start recategorizing it to Roth, we're getting away from this Secure Act situation,
Right.
all right? And we're creating a pocket of money which will be lifetime tax-free income on top of tax-advantaged Social Security dollars again. So that's kind of the direction that I'm looking in as a planner for retirement for people.
So one of the questions that I want to ask you about is, I know that you have a strong involvement with a group called AFVs, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because I know this is also a subject of some of the teachings in the courses that you guys offer through AFVs.
Correct. So AFVs is Adult Financial Education Services. Their website is afves.org. The whole process or point that AFVs is involved in is creating financial literacy for people anywhere between 55 and 70, let's say, so that they understand subjects that we're just talking about here with Secure Act and RMDs and when you have to take RMDs. And by the way, one of the other things, just as an example, that just came out of Secure Act is that you no longer, at 70 and a half, you used to have to stop putting into an IRA. If you're actively working now at 70 and a half, there is no age limit now. You can continue putting into an IRA. So AFVs You can go on AFVs.org and you can see the subjects that are being taught and the instructors, which I be on there, of course, and our upcoming classes and where they're located, mostly here. I teach at Florida Tech and I teach at the Government Center in Viera. And you can look up those schedules on that site.
One of the things that we've talked about ongoing here at Helping Seniors, and we've built actually somewhat of a library of these because you've done many shows together with Helping Seniors over the years, but there's radio and television shows that August Velten has done where we've talked about Social Security, and I want to ask you or advise you that it really would make sense for you to find those as companion to what we're talking about today. I think we did a show at one point about Roth IRA specifically, where you really have drilled down into this, and you can find those shows on helpingseniors.of.brevard.org. It's helpingseniors.of.brevard.org. And we also have a YouTube channel where you're able to find those shows as well. And before we dig a little bit deeper, I want to say if people are intrigued by what you're explaining and say, wow, this is really something I need to have maybe August look at my own personal situation and see if this is going to make, or am I doing this the right way? Is there a better way I should be thinking about this? How do they get in touch with you, or how does that process work?
Well, the easy way is to just call the office number and at 321-622-5418. And normally you'll talk to the office manager, Karen, and she'll schedule a time to come in. I do not charge for planning or anything like that. You know, if I can help you, I will. A lot of people that come to my classes wind up being clients because I put those pieces together, the roadmap for retirement together, so that they know where they're going and who's going to pay taxes and why they're going to pay taxes and when they should start taking different, the different benefits, Social Security compared to IRA dollars, things like that. But every individual situation is different. And again, so I'd be more than happy to help anybody that wants to call and set up at a time, and we'll see if we can put you in a better position.
And so that phone number, one more time.
321-622-5418.
And I would hope as you're watching through this program that you're gaining an understanding that really there's a lot of complexity. It's not, we were talking even before the cameras rolled, that it's not specifically as simple as how much you earn, but particularly as you approach your retirement years, there's a lot of variables that come into play. It has everything to do with what age do you choose to begin taking Social Security. It has to do with doing the correct things to make sure you've paid down your debt and the things that you want to eliminate along the way. As we've been learning, it's also important that if you have some tax-deferred situations as opposed to really tax-free situations,
correct,
like you're discussing with the traditional IRAs versus Roth IRAs, that you want to make these moves while you have a little bit of runway ahead of you to be able to do that. So with that in mind, I want to circle back to our topic today of the Secure Act. We wrote down this, that really you want your strategy to be set in a way that keeps more of your money in your hands. So as somebody comes into your office and they sit down and say, well, here's where I'm at, how do you begin to put all those pieces together?
Okay, well, there are two pieces. One is standard life, and the other is quality of life.
Okay.
If we can arrange tax efficiency and we can put it in a category where, like Social Security or pension, where you have dollars that you know you're paying your bills with, okay, whether you have a mortgage, but you're definitely going to have your taxes, your real estate taxes, homeowners association, fuel in your car, car insurance, food on your table. All those expenses are standard living. Vacations, going to the theater, going out to eat, the type of car might be quality of life.
Okay.
So we try and arrange them so they're tax efficient, but also in the context of risk at the current age. You can take a lot less risk currently, if you're getting ready to retire, just retired, than you would when you were 40, 45 years old. Do we have a minute I can?
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's an example. Let's say that you're a football team and you're on your own 10-yard line. And let's say that makes you 45 years old.
Okay.
All right? And you can open up that playbook and run any play in that playbook, right, to get down the field.
Sure.
So let's say you've been successful and you've gotten down into the field and now you're on the 20-yard line and in. Anybody know what that's called? The red zone. Okay? So now let's say you're 60, 65, 58. When you open up that book, you don't have all those plays anymore. Right? You only have so many yards. You have maybe 20 yards plus 10 of the end zone, 30 yards.
Right.
So you know you can't run the same plays that you did before.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the same thing. And there's a cardinal rule in football. When you get to the red zone, the cardinal rule is very simple. Don't fumble the ball.
Right.
Don't give the ball away, right? So in the financial world, when you get to the age where you're in that red zone, which most people are, 4 to 5 years before they want to retire to 4 to 5 years after they retire, red zone, if you fumble the ball financially, your retirement is probably not going to be what you thought it was going to be. So you have to be careful. Your investments aren't the same as the investments early on. You have to take less risk. In fact, rule of 100, very simple. So take 100, subtract your age. So if, let's say you're 60, okay, that leaves 40. What most economists will tell you, not brokerage houses, but economists will tell you, 40% then is the most you should have, of your assets, the most you should have in the market. The rest should be protected, okay, in one way, shape, form. And then, of course, then how do you create the income flow that you need? So that between that and tax efficiency, it can work out to be a pretty comfortable retirement where you're sleeping at night, not worrying about how am I going to pay my bills next month, because as we just had happen here for the last few days, the market crashed. There are people out there saying, oh no, how am I going to pay my bills next month? You don't want to be in that position. You want your bills to be protected with other dollars than just money in the market.
Well, and there's, as we keep talking about this, there's so many levels in this, is why you need a real expert looking over your shoulder. But we also wrote down here longevity concerns, because, you know, we were joking a few minutes ago about a 101-year-old driver, but it used to be a rare thing that somebody turned 100. In fact, they used to celebrate it on national TV with a little birthday announcement.
Absolutely.
Now, it's an interesting thing because of how long people are living, that a real concern is outliving your money.
Well, and why would you be concerned about outliving your money? And there's several factors. One, there's things that we can control. All right, the longer we live, the more we know we have to deal with inflation. All right, the longer we live, the more we know we're going to have bear markets, which is a bad market, right? Market trending down. So the longer we live, we might have long-term care costs. So inflation is going to eat up our buying power. But a big one is taxes.
Right.
And if you're paying more tax because of poor planning than you should be, there's a reason for that. Now, quickly, an RMD is based on the value as of the previous year, on December 31st. If you take that required minimum distribution later in the year, let's say in June, and the market's down 15%, IRS does not care. You still have to take the RMD based on the 12/31 value. So let's say you take a 15% hit on the money coming out of that IRA. But guess what? That money coming out is now added to your income. So now you're paying, let's say, 15% tax bracket. You just lost 30% value on that money. That's when people start worrying about running out of money before they run out of breath, so to speak. Right? It's very, very important. Taxes can be extremely important, especially since we don't know what our taxes and what we're going to get hit for with taxes going down the road. You know what the highest tax bracket in America has been? 90%.
Wow.
Historically, 90%.
Wow.
Okay, almost socialism.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the only place I've heard of tax rates that high. I didn't know that was true here.
In the 70s, there were many people that were in the 70% tax bracket.
Oh my goodness.
So we are way down from there. Will it go back up? It's going to go back up. I don't know where it's going to go, but I guarantee you it's going to be more than what we have now. So the proper planning is get yourself set up now, understand taxation of Social Security benefits, how a Roth can be effective compared to a regular IRA, what's the difference between long-term capital gains tax compared to income tax, all right? What's long-term capital gains? So those are investments that you have after you've paid tax on your money.
Right.
Then you go down to a brokerage house, let's say, and you say, I'm going to open up a portfolio. Those dollars that appreciate, you pay long-term capital gains tax.
Right,
all
right.
As long as you held them for a year or more.
Right.
Well, long-term capital gains right now are always, I'm going to use the word always, less than your income tax bracket. In fact, right now, proper planning, if your income tax bracket is 15% or less, and you have long-term, you have appreciated stock, let's say that you sell, you would pay no tax, no long-term capital gains, no income tax, right? So proper planning again, understanding the difference between regular income taxable, which is again money coming out of your qualified plans, your IRAs, right? Whereas Roth It's tax-free, so no taxation. So if I had maybe long-term capital gains treatment, I had Social Security tax advantage, and then I have my Roth income tax-free, don't you think I'm going to pay a lot less back to the government in taxes?
No doubt.
All right, so that's proper planning. How do I get from point A to point B to point C? Again, roadmap for your retirement.
You know, and so in just a moment or two that we have left, I really want to come back and say, if you've been focused in on what we've been talking about, then you know already that there's a lot of money in the balance just as far as how you plan and how you work through the things that we've been talking about here. And really, this is why, again, I want to come back and talk about AFES and the value of the education. AFES, it's a nonprofit organization,
Correct.
right?
National
Dedicated.
nonprofit.
Yeah, so one more time, tell us a little bit about some of the classes and things that you guys offer.
Sure. Well, again, AFES.org, AFES.org. You can go on there, you'll see instructors. I'll be on there. You're going to see the different classes and when they're being held. I think our classes are now scheduled through June or July, something like that. And what it really is about is, again, financial literacy, helping people understand what their choices are, good choices and bad choices, and how to rectify maybe some situations that they have, and to set up their planning so that, again, they have a direction to go in. It's not just going down to Social Security when you turn 62, as an example, and applying for Social Security. You want to know the rules. You want to know why you're going to do it. Is the timing correct? All those things are very, very important, including people that wind up in a situation where their life situation gives them a problem where maybe they have to take Social Security. At least they'll know how to handle it.
You know, that's really the crux of it. It's your money. You might as well invest yourself the time so that you can manage it to your best interest. Well, thanks, August, for being part of the show today, and thank you for being part of Helping Seniors on behalf of Joe Steckler for Helping Seniors. So thank you again for joining us for Helping Seniors TV.
Joe Steckler, thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we would welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.